Once again, welcome to the Unshakable Foundation meeting of Cocaine Anonymous. This is a main chair meeting, and today it's with great pleasure, lots of gratitude, that I'm welcoming David G and David G from Illinois, who've come to share around step one for about 40 minutes, after which we'll open up for Q&As. With that, over to you guys.
Thanks, Young. Thanks so much for having us here. We're loving this meeting since you started it. It's been like a murderer's row of amazing speakers. So like, what an honor to be able to be in their company. So I'm David G. I'm a recovered addict, and with me is...
I'm David G. I'm a recovered addict also.
So yeah, that's our cute little combo, David G and David G, if you don't know us. But amazingly, we know so many people here and love seeing our family across the pond as frequently as we can. So like Young started talking about, we're going to talk principally about the first step today. David and I love to talk about the first step because sadly, in the rooms of recovery and Cocaine Anonymous, people don't get a proper introduction to this. The first step is our problem statement. The 12th step is our solution statement. Why would I get into 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and make it to 12 if I really didn't understand the problem statement in 1? So we're going to break that down for you today. It's going to be old news for some of you, but possibly some new information for some of you as well. But we're not going to just talk about the program. We're going to make, about the program, the problem. We're going to make sure that we end with some hope and some solution as well. So stick with us along this journey. We're going to come straight out of the book. And this is a meeting of Cocaine Anonymous, but one of the core basic tests of CA is the book Alcoholics Anonymous, right? We're not going to convert the language for simplicity's sake. We're just going to read it straight out of the text. It'll make it easier for us to all follow along. If you got your book, please open it up. If not, we're going to read to you. We're going to start in the doctor's opinion on page Roman numeral 28. And this is a doctor. His name was William Duncan Silkworth. He practiced in the 1900s in a hospital called Towns Hospital that was in New York. And he treated somewhere between 40 and 50,000 alcoholics and addicts over the course of his career. And he really figured out what our problem was. So he wrote this chapter in our book to help us understand what his observations were. And what we're going to study today in the first step, that we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, dash, that our lives have become unmanageable. We're going to help you understand that we're powerless physically, that we're powerless mentally, and then after the dash, our lives are unmanageable, otherwise else known, we're spiritually ill. We have a spiritual malady. So I preface that to say, because we're going to jump in right in the middle. The doctor, he's going to help us understand the physical powerlessness of this disease of alcoholism or addiction. Okay, so top of Roman numeral 28, XXV, III. A lot of old people here, so you know your Roman numerals. You youngsters, I know they don't teach it anymore, we've discovered. All right, so here we go. Top of Roman numeral 28. This is what the doctor's saying about our physical powerlessness. He said, we believe, and so suggested a few years ago, that the action of alcohol in these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy. The phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. What this means in simple language is that when I put alcohol in my body, when I put cocaine in my body, I have an allergic reaction to it. And my allergic reaction is my body says, oh, 1's not enough. I need 2, I need 3, I need 4, I need 100. And then the second part of what I read is this only happens to the real alcoholic, the real addict. This doesn't happen to the normal people that we partied with in life.
So I'm gonna come up with definitions for you too, because it's really important as we study the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous to understand that this was published in 1939. The bill used language out of a time in the 1930s. Definitions have changed, guys. So we, in our study, we use a 1938 Webster's Dictionary. So we stay really precise to what Bill is trying to talk about. Now, this is not a tricky word, but it's a word that I need to know what it means. The word chronic in that sentence there. So chronic alcoholics, it says, we believe and so suggested a few years ago that the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics. So the definition for chronic is marked by a long duration or frequent reoccurrence. So I have to take that in. I have to consider what they're talking about there. Then it's talking about this manifestation of this allergy. What is this allergy stuff they're talking about? They're talking about something like an allergy, like I get itchy, my eyes get watery. No. They're talking about an allergy. The definition is an abnormal reaction to something. So when I ingest cocaine in my body, I set out to have one or two, and I have 22. I have them till I can't do it anymore. So this is an abnormal reaction. I break out in a craving. This only happens when I'm using cocaine. I break out in a craving, or alcohol, or any other mind-altering substance. And this phenomenon, it's not a phenomenon now. We won't get into the definition of that. We know exactly what happens in the body and the mind. But this craving, it's limited to this class, and I circle the word never occurs in the average temperate drinker. Guys grow up with guys that you partied with and we did lines with, and the guy would grab a gram on Thursday night, and he'd do a bump before he went home, and then he goes, I'm going to go home and eat dinner, and then after dinner I'm going to have another bump, and then I'm going to save the rest of it for the weekend. Who does that? It's like, oh my goodness, never done that in my life. That never occurs in the average temperate drinker. For me, once I've ingested in my body, I break out in craving. Then this manifestation of this allergy takes place inside of me.
So continuing on here, the paragraph is going to make some statements about these allergic types like us. So it says, these allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form at all. And once having formed the habit and found they cannot break it, once having lost their self-confidence, their reliance upon things human, their problems piling up on them, and become astonishingly difficult to solve. When studying the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and guys, this is a book that is intended to be read and studied. It's a textbook. It's an instruction manual. It tells us the problem we're facing, the solution to the problem, and then the fix to get from the problem to solution, like I said a few minutes ago. So whenever these statements are being made, we love to turn them into questions. We got this from, RIP, Mark Houston, great speaker. So if I turn these into questions, everybody think about them for yourselves. As an allergic type, can I use alcohol, cocaine safely in any form at all? Can I safely use beer, wine, spirits? How about mouthwash, vanilla extract, maraschino cherries? Once I've formed the habit, have I found I cannot break it? So when I break out in craving, can I stop abruptly? Can I have that one or two bumps like David was talking about and put it away for the rest of the weekend? Yeah, at the very beginning I could, but inside of a few months, my allergic reaction was strong. For me, the answer is no. How about this? Have I lost my self-confidence about my drinking and using because of what happens when I break out in craving? Have I lost my reliance upon things human? This is such an important point. David, you want to talk to this? Reliance upon things human? Oh, he's muted.
My fault. Sorry about that, guys. I muted myself. I didn't want to disrupt David when he's talking. So relying upon things human. Think about this, guys. And, I have 5 daughters, 3 grandchildren, and I love my kids. And unfortunately for me, if I don't screw this thing up by next week, I'll have 24 years of continuous sobriety by the grace of God, right? Fellowship of Cocaine Anonymous, 12 steps, big book, and a big book sponsor in the fellowship here. But I love my kids, and they would come to the door waiting on me to come in at the end of the evening, and I'm wasted out of my mind. And and this is my analogy that I use. But guys love their children, right? Men, we love our children, but women, you really love your children, like really love your children. Like I remember hearing women go, well, just put a picture of your kids on the magnet on the refrigerator, and then every time you want to use, just take a look at that picture and see how that works for you, and then you won't want to use. I'm beyond human aid, guys. I love my kids, and I didn't get high because of them, and I didn't get high because of my parents or the color of my skin or my gender or my sexual orientation. I have a biological difference inside of me, and we won't get into that. That makes me want to use no matter what. Set out to have 2 and have 22. And women in general too, the same thing happens to them as men is equally. I'm beyond human aid. I don't stop for another person on my own free will because I don't have the power to do that. Last thing I'll say about that, I'm without power, choice, or control.
How about this last question? Are my problems piling up on me and becoming astonishingly difficult to solve? David and I do the same rap at least twice a month, every month, if not in some meetings like this, because we have a couple treatment center commitments. We do the same thing every time because there's always a new crop in treatment. It's amazing how every time we say, show of hands, whose problems are piling up on you and becoming astonishingly difficult to solve? We'll be in a men's meeting of 25 guys and 3 guys will raise their hands. And we're like, guys, you're in treatment. Please don't tell me everything is going well in your lives. Not being a jerk, but come on, let's get real here. If our problems weren't piling up on us and becoming astonishingly difficult to solve, we wouldn't be showing up in a meeting at Cocaine Anonymous saying, ooh, maybe I got a problem. I need to look into this.
Yeah, well, think about it, guys. I mean, I don't think I've ever met a stupid cocaine addict. I've met some dumb ones, but I've never really met any stupid ones. I mean, we get ourselves in some pretty hairy situations and we get ourselves out. But after a time, it's pretty difficult to do this. But these are things that David read these things as they were statements. We turn them into questions. If you're new today, and Young did a wonderful job of welcoming you if you're new, consider what the questions we're asking you. Are your problems piling up on you? Do you break out in craving once you take a drink? Are you beyond human aid? I got to consider these things. Like, consider means go home or sit here and consider what we're talking about here. Don't irrationally answer the question immediately. Consider what we're asking.
So this is the first part of the power list described in the first step. We're powerless over alcohol. We're powerless over cocaine and all other mind-altering substances. Physically powerless. So if I know I am powerless, when I put cocaine in my body, bad stuff happens, why don't I just not pick up again? Okay, it's a rhetorical question because we're going to answer this for you. And the doctor answers it for us at the bottom of the page. So drop down to the bottom of Roman numeral 28. The doctor's going to discuss the second way in which we're sick, the second way in which we're powerless, which is mentally powerless. We carry a mental obsession, a mental compulsion that always makes us pick up again, even when we don't want to. Here's what the doctor said. He said, men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol.
So Joe and Charlie used a great analogy. Is like, there's no greater drink in the world than cold, cool spring water. But I'd never sat down and drank a whole case of cold, cool spring water ever in my life, right? So this is talking about this obsession. So men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. Like, right, my wife, when she's making dinner, she's not one of us. She's, as Cameron F would call a mogul, right? Is that the right word?
Muggle.
Harry Potter, muggle. I'm sorry. I never seen Harry Potter. My wife and kids have muggle. She's an earth person, right? She can have a glass of wine. And as she's having a glass of wine, she puts it down and she cooks dinner and then she eats dinner and she goes, do you know where my glass of wine's at? I'm like, yeah, it's right over there. I know exactly where it's at. She hasn't touched it in the last hour. And then when she gets done with dinner, she goes, you know what? I really don't want any more of this. And then she does this alcohol abuse thing. She pours it back in the bottle. I've never seen anything so crazy in my life. See, alcoholics don't understand normal drinkers. Normal drinkers don't understand alcoholics in the way we drink.
So all people drink and drug for the effect produced. Get a little buzz, take the edge off, get out on the dance floor, maybe pick a fight, whatever it is. But for the addict man or woman, the addict person, the sensation is so elusive that while they admit it is injurious, they cannot after a time differentiate the true from the false. So what's the sensation? That's the effect produced. I want the effect produced. I want to have a couple of bumps just to get a little jazzed up and go to the club. That's what I want. But it eludes me. You guys know what elusive means? Like, it's slippery. I can't grasp it. I can't quite catch it. That effect produced that I want, I can't catch that. I can't meet that. Because while they admit it's injurious, they cannot after time differentiate the true from the false. What that means is the reason why the effect produced eludes me is my plan is to have 2 bumps. But after the first one, I break out in craving and I finish the whole 8-ball in 5 minutes. I way overshot the target because my body said more, more, more. And then when I'm coming to the next day and I'm considering what happened the night before, I admitted it was injurious. I guess I got to tell my story I always tell. See if you can relate to something like this. It's the end of a hard week. And I call my girlfriend and say, oh, it's 6 o'clock. I'm going to go to happy hour with my coworkers. I'll be home by 8 o'clock tonight. If you want to have dinner ready, we'll have a meal and we'll watch a movie. She says, great. See you then. I go to happy hour at 6. What happens by 6:01? I have my first drink. I break out in craving. Did I make it home by 8 p.m.? Of course not. By 8 p.m., I was annihilated. I got drunk, and I probably said I wasn't going to do any coke that night either. But I got on the phone to my dealer as soon as I got the booze in my body. I got wasted. I touched a woman in the bar inappropriately. Her boyfriend punches me in the face. The bouncers throw me out, opening the exit door with my skull. And I finally make it home, not at 8 o'clock, but at 2 a.m., where I find myself locked out and I got to sleep it off in the apartment. Anybody ever had an injurious situation like this? Yeah, I know you all have had that. So what happens the next day when Young calls me? He's like, dude, rough one last night. Let's go out tonight. Just a little hair of the dog that bit you. Don't worry. 2 drinks and no coke. I got your back. Can I differentiate the true from the false when that offer is made? Absolutely not. I don't even think about it. My brain says, oh, Young's got my back. Tonight will be different. 2 drinks, no coke, and I'll be home. And what do you think happens Saturday when I go out and I put the first one in my body? I break out in craving and the whole thing happens all over again.
So show of hands here. Does everyone remember their first bump or their first drink? Right? You guys remember it? Right. Right. Well, you guys remember your first baked potato? Anyone? How come? Why don't you remember that? Because it didn't produce an effect that cocaine and alcohol does in us. It does that for everybody. But for the normal person, they just have a little bit to take the edge off, like David said. But for us, we break out in this craving, this obsessive mind of mine. Without my permission, without my consent, I pick up this drink and this drug, and I'm off to the races again, and I can't tell you when I'm going to stop. So what sets this whole thing in motion? Let's find that out next.
It goes on to say, to them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. Our addicted life seems, I had no clue I could live any other way. How was I living? This is what the next sentence is going to start to describe. So we looked at the physical powerlessness, breaking out in that craving. We very quickly looked at this mental powerlessness that in the face of those consequences, my brain says it's okay to pick up again. And why is this? This is the part we're going to get into after the dash, that our lives have become unmanageable, that I'm spiritually ill and have a spiritual malady. Because when I don't have anything in my body, they're restless, irritable, and discontented, unless they can again experience a sense of ease and comfort, which comes at once by taking a few drinks, a few bumps, drinks which they see others taking with impunity. You know, restless, like can't sit still, not really comfortable, and irritable, always on the verge of anger, and discontented, unhappy. When I don't have something in my body, that's how I'm going through life. And I get the quickest, briefest respite from that, because I only get the sense of ease and comfort when I crack open the bottle, or I get home with the baggie from the dealer and turn off the phone and lock the door to my apartment, right? And the worst part is I want the relief from that because I see other people getting relief, and I see them getting relief with impunity. Impunity, guys, means without punishment. I want to be able to drink and drug like a normal person. But for me, it's all about the punishment. It's all about injury.
Hey, don't call me irritable. It's like, are you kidding me? I'm the nicest guy you ever want to meet, for Christ's sake. Well, here's an example with irritable. Your kids are driving you nuts, right? I can't get the TV's volume to work. You know, there's not enough food in the refrigerator. Things are irritating me. I got to look at the whole picture here. What is this talking about here? This is when I am stone cold sober without a drink or a drug in my body. I'm irritable, restless, and discontented. Unless they can, again, experience the sense. David and I use this as an example in treatment centers. It's not the drink. It's the sense, the ease and comfort that comes before that. How about the twist of the vodka bottle and that? How about that bag after I picked it up from the dealer, but I got to make sure I can't do it on the street because I don't want the cops to get me. I got it. And if I don't crap my pants before I get home because of my stomach problems, because of the dope that I'm about to already use, it's the sense of ease and comfort that comes at once by taking a few drinks. Drinks I see others with taking impunity. I don't see that any longer. I don't ever see the problems in anybody else's. Like, I am self-involved. I'm only thinking of myself here. I can't think beyond myself.
The doctor goes on to say, after they've succumbed to the desire again, so mentally powerless, so many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops because I'm physically powerless, I break out in craving. They pass through the well-known stages of a spree, a binge, a run, a drunkenness. emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. Anybody? Firm resolution not to drink or drug again, right? 10,000 times I made that. And guess how many times I broke that resolution? 10,001 times. And sometimes 5 minutes after I made it, because when I finally came to at 7 o'clock on a Sunday night, and I'm looking at myself in the mirror, talking to myself in the third person, David, you're smarter than that. David, you're stronger than that. David, you're screwing your life up. You are done. And then because it was Sunday night, and a buddy called me, he was like, dude, where are you? Sunday Night Football, Chicago Bears are on. And by 7:15, I'm at the bar around the corner, and I'm right back at it. No mental defense. This is repeated over and over. And unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there's very little hope of recovery. Uh-oh. So a little doom promise there. If I'm a real alcoholic, the way that was just quickly described, physically and mentally powerless and spiritually ill, there's no hope for me, very little, unless I have a complete psychic change. But if you flip that around, it says if I do have a complete psychic change, then there's going to be great hope in my recovery. But before we get into hope, we got to dig into the spiritual malady a little bit more, right? So let's go to page 52, regular 52, no more Roman numerals. All right, everybody there. Second paragraph on page 52, starting with the second sentence, we were having trouble. This is a paragraph we call the bedevilments. It is not the only description of what it looks like to have an unmanageable life or to be spiritually ill, but for my money, it's a very good description. We were having trouble with personal relationships. We couldn't control our emotional natures. We were a prey to misery and depression. We couldn't make a living. We had a feeling of uselessness. We were full of fear. We were unhappy. We couldn't seem to be of real help to other people. Same as we did before. Take these statements, turn them into questions, which, by the way, this is great to do coming into recovery. We're taking somebody through the steps, explaining this to them. This is a pretty good exercise for me to do almost 20 years in. If I find myself having a quote-unquote bad day, it might give me an indication of what's the current level of my spiritual fitness. Am I having trouble with personal relationships?
So ask yourself that question. We always ask this question in treatment, and half the hands go up. I'm like, are you kidding me? Your wife's leaving you, have no relationship with your kids, and you got those two black eyes. Where'd you get them from? It's like, I think you're having problems with personal relationships, guys. I have to ask, these are things to consider here. And as we go through this thing, think about this for one moment if you've never done this exercise before. These things all have one thing in common. And I'm going to leave it at that, and I'll answer the question when David finishes the paragraph.
How about this? Can I control my emotional nature? Am I unreasonably angry at the drop of the hat? Am I a prey to misery and depression? If you're anything like me, and I assume many of you are, I woke up in the morning towards the end, and the first thought once I opened my eyes was, oh, not again. Not again what? Not again anything. Not again everything. Like, not again, I have to get out of bed and go through life. I was so miserable and depressed. My favorite saying is, my misery had 5 huge pots of misery, but only a 4-burner stove. So no matter how I tried to like rearrange it and move it around, I couldn't handle all the misery that I was experiencing in my life. I had no reason to get up and go about anything. Can I make a living? And take this one.
What does that mean to you? So for me today, it means something totally different than what they're asking me in the book here. But making a living means showing up on time, leaving on time, not stealing, not taking cigarette breaks whenever I damn well feel like it, not lying to my boss, looking them in the eye or indirectly lying to my boss. I mean, making a living, like actually making an honest living, something that is not normal to my nature. But today it's something I do on a regular basis because this is a part of the disciplines here. I won't get into the 10, but 10, 11, and 12 are going to be really strong here as we recover from this illness here.
Am I Do I have a feeling of uselessness? Take that one too, David.
So think about it. And I heard Young say this a long time ago in one of his talks, and man, it rings so true to me. Please listen to other speakers and their experience with the book, because we all want to have, see, I don't read the big book word for word with my sponsees. Firstly, I take them through it quickly, get them to God, and then we go back over the study of the book, right? But man, every time I read this book, I don't know if this happens to you, but man, some angel pops in a sentence or something in the page that rings true for me. But when I hear other speakers talk, Young said this one time, maybe usefulness, and I don't know if he used the word maybe, but the word useful might be the key to life. Might just be the key to life. How are you feeling? Are you feeling useless? I mean, my wife's not asking for any help from me anymore because she sure damn well don't even know when I'm going to show up. My job isn't counting on me because I don't even show up but 2 days a week. Why do I show up 2 days a week? Because I can't show up more than 2 days a week. And when I do show up, they can't count on me either that I'm going to stay around all day or even do my job. So I'm feeling useless. I'm not participating in my kid's life because I'm a full-blown drug addict in chronic progressive stage of this illness. Not feeling useful. Today, opposite things have happened in my life. I feel like a useful person, of service to God and all the people around me.
Am I full of fear? Full of fear. Not sometimes scared, not occasionally timid. Am I full of fear? Do I only see fear in outcomes? Here's another example. So I got the girlfriend and she says, hey, we've been dating for a few years. Don't you think you ought to buy me a ring and propose to me, marry me? Men, okay, so all men, unrecovered men are pigs. Well, some of you women are too. Right? I got a couple female sponsees here. I know how they went about their lives. But speaking as a man, right? The first thing that I think when I'm forced into that corner by my girlfriend is, oh no, this is going to be the last woman I'm going to sleep with for the rest of my life, right? Which is fear. What's my second thought, guys? Oh, wait a minute. If I don't marry this woman, I'm never going to be with anybody. I'm going to be alone the rest of my life. Fear to get married. Fear not to get married. Find 13 more outcomes in that scenario in your unrecovered mind. And I challenge you to find an outcome that makes sense that is not fear-based. Or how about at the job? They say, David, you haven't been screwing up for a change. We're going to make you assistant manager. What's my initial response? Fear. Oh, God. Now they're going to expect even more from me. They're going to pay me $2 more an hour. I'm really going to have to work hard. I can't cut any more corners. What's my second thought? Fear. If I don't take the job, if I don't take the promotion, I'm never going to make enough money. I sure as hell won't be able to buy that rock for my girlfriend to get married. Fear, 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 fear. There's only fear outcomes to the unrecovered mind. Full of fear. Full of it. And how about this last one? Can I seem to be of real help to other people? Emphasis on the word real. When I was a young man, post-college, my first vehicle I had was a little Chevy S10 pickup truck. And when you're 22, 23, 24, you're always moving apartments and all your friends are always moving. So it's like, who can help me move? Who can help me move? It's always going on in the friend system. And anytime people be like, hey, David, can we use your pickup truck to move? I got to go one apartment to the next. Guess what I always said? Yes. Was it because I was being altruistic and I wanted to help you out of the goodness of my heart? No. I was keeping a ledger right here in my mind's eye of what I did for you, so that when I wanted something back, I was going to come calling and I didn't care if you wanted to help me or not. That is not being of real help to other people. You know what real help to other people is? Giving aid, giving assistance with absolutely no thought of getting anything in return. Guys, I was so 7 for 7 in these bedevilments, so terribly sick. My life was so unmanageable as I expressed these things, so desperately, terribly, spiritually ill. But let's be real. I had to have this stuff pointed out to me. I didn't come to Cocaine Anonymous because I understood that maybe I had a spiritual malady and I was looking for help for that. No, I came in because I couldn't stop doing coke. Right? Bottom line, it was killing me more than anything else in my life. But I was educated to understand there's something else going on here. The cocaine qualified me for my seat. Right? The spiritual malady qualified me for the program of recovery. So if I'm stuck like this, powerless physically and mentally and desperately spiritually ill, what is it going to look like if I get better? Let's move backwards in the book to page 27.
Let me just submit one thing to you real quick, because I said I would. Let me submit one thing. That's okay. So those 8 things on that page, what are they? What do they all have in common? I submit to you this. None of them are external. Oh, they seem to be external, but they're not external. They're all internal. This internal condition. We are talking about here the second half of the first step. So the first step has 2 parts. The first part of the first step says, I am powerless over cocaine and all other mind-altering substances. That is a problem. Not the problem. David and I haven't picked up a drink or a drug, and a lot of you here, in a very, very long time. But the dash means to continue. If I am going to continue, that means I started somewhere. That I learned to concede in my innermost self that I'm a real cocaine addict because I studied this book. I understand the nature of this allergy and this obsession in my mind. But what I don't understand is the problem, that my life is unmanageable, that I have this spiritual malady, this untreated alcoholism that is running me around. All of those things are internal here. We need to be rid of that. That's why we're going to go to page 27 of our book now.
We start off by saying the first step's our problem statement, and our 12th step is a solution statement, which is having had a spiritual awakening as the result, the singular result of these steps. Right? That's the solution that we're promised. And I want to get from the problem in 1 to the solution in 12. Pretty simple. I got to do everything in between. But when a newcomer comes in and they're confused and they barely understand when we're taking them through the book like this, I've been asked, what does this look like? What does it mean, a spiritual awakening, spiritual experience? What does it look like? Bill told us in this book exactly what it's going to look like. So there's a little story. It's on page 26 and 27 principally, but we're going to cut to 27. This is another doctor. So Dr. Silkworth wrote the doctor's opinion. This is another doctor in this story, a guy named Carl Jung. He's one of the most famous psychiatrists of all time. He was a disciple, a student of Sigmund Freud. So if you haven't heard of Jung, I'm certain you've heard of Sigmund Freud. He's, considered one of the sort of the godfather of psychoanalysis and a brilliant psychiatrist. Jung was in the same class. The reason why what Jung's contribution to CA and AA before it was so important is that Freud, if you went to Freud with a drinking or a drug problem, he's going to have you lie on the sofa and maybe give you some Valium, enough sort of talk therapy and pharmacology until you got better. That's what he believed. That's how we got better when we had a problem. Jung departed from him. Jung believed some problems had a spiritual solution. Okay? And this is what he's going to describe right here. He's going to talk to this guy, Roland Hazard. Now, again, this is pre-CA, pre-AA. And one of the most brilliant psychiatrists on the planet was helping this guy, Roland Hazard, very wealthy American businessman who had gone over to the UK, to Switzerland, rather, to be in Jung's care because he couldn't stop drinking. He studied with the doctor, started to understand the inner workings of his mind. He said, I think I'm cured. The doctor said, I think you are too. Go back to America, have an amazing life. And guess what happened after Roland Hazard left the care of one of the most brilliant psychiatrists on the planet? Roland drank again. So he went back to Dr. Jung and he said, why can I not stop drinking? And here's what the doctor told him, starting in the second paragraph. The doctor said, you have the mind of a chronic alcoholic. I have never seen one single case recover that state of mind existed in the extent that it does in you. Our friend felt as though the gates of hell had closed on him with a clang. Guys, death sentence. This disease kills. Imagine if you had cancer and you went to the best hospital in downtown London and the chief of oncology looked at your cancer and said, I've never seen anybody with cancer like yours get better. How would you feel? Death sentence, right? Cocaine addiction, alcohol addiction, same thing. Go, David.
So this is hopelessness, right? That's what this is comes across. And I pray that if you're new today, that you feel in this hopelessness, that you don't have one more plan of action to think that you can stay sober. If you know the facts about yourself, if you're armed with what we're teaching you here today, and what this book is teaching you, not what we're teaching you, but how to come out of this book, I pray that you feel this hopelessness. Because if you have this hopelessness, you have a desire of a drowning man to take that life preserver that we're throwing you out of this big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, to do this work and get to a power greater than yourself that will solve all your problems. But I have to be at a place of hopelessness. And that is a great description. When the gates of hell are playing shut on me, that's that description for me.
He said to the doctor, is there no exception? Now remember, this is pre-CA, pre-AA. AA was first 12-step fellowship, right? CA spawned from there, thank God. Before this was what the doctor said. Yes, replied the doctor, there is. Exceptions to cases such as yours have been occurring since early times, here and there once in a while. This is why I'm stressing this is pre-12-step recovery, because he's talking about here and there once in a while people got better. Guys, I see it all the time when people do the work thoroughly and honestly. We don't have to live in the here and there once in a while anymore. But he said here and there once in a while, alcoholics have had what are called vital spiritual experiences. Vital meaning life-giving, life-sustaining. Spiritual meaning bigger than human. And an experience is like an event. So it's a life-saving, bigger than human occurrence. To me, these occurrences are phenomena. One of the most brilliant, this is not debatable, guys, one of the most brilliant and accomplished psychiatrists on the planet said, these are phenomena. They're very rare, and I can barely explain it to you. This was the message he gave to Roland, right, in the 1920s. To me, these occurrences are phenomena. They appear to be in the nature of huge emotional displacements and rearrangements. Guys, this is what it looks like. Pay attention if you haven't heard anything else we've said here today. Ideas, emotions, and attitudes. The stuff in my head, the stuff in my heart, and those things rotting in my belly. Ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which were once the guiding forces of the lives of these men, are suddenly cast to one side. And don't even worry about suddenly. For most of us, it's gradually. And a completely new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate them. Guys, I've never, in all my years, seen a person work the program of recovery thoroughly and honestly and have their ideas, emotions, and attitudes replaced with similar or worse ones. It just doesn't happen. When someone achieves spiritual fitness, when they have a spiritual awakening, spiritual experience, they always get better. This is the psychic change that Dr. Silkworth talked about. This is the spiritual awakening experience that Dr. Jung's talking about. My head, my heart, and my gut go 180 degrees. Everything gets healthy.
So David talks about here, and he did a great job of reading this and talk about the word phenomena. Phenomena means it could be observed, but it can't be explained by this great scientific mind. He can't explain it to us here. And if you want, and I don't know if it's okay with this group or not, David and I do a big book study on Zoom on Wednesday nights, 7 p.m. in the States. Maybe David can post it in the chat. We're going to get into this part of the book in probably this week or next week. And we'll get into a little bit more history of what this happened and how Carl Jung ended up meeting up with William James and how he had this it was divine how they all met. We don't want to get into all this today, but let's talk about what's in the text here. Ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which once were the guiding force of my life. All these things need to change. Ideas, emotions, change. Attitudes need to change. Once were the guiding force of our lives, these men were suddenly cast to one aside, and a completely new set of conceptions and motives began to dominate. Dominate is another word for change that needs to take place. That is a great promise. What do all these things again have in common? They're all internal. And oh, one more thing. This must happen for me. This must happen for me. And it cannot be, this can't be done by human power. It has to be produced by a power greater than myself. I've tried doing it on my own power. It doesn't work.
So we're going to do one more paragraph. I think we're butting up against our time here. Everybody back up 2 more pages to page 25, and we're going to look at the bottom paragraph. Page 27 is my favorite page, but the bottom paragraph of page 25 is my favorite paragraph in the book. And whenever I give a talk and I'm passionate coming out of the book, so frequently people ask me, David, how did you get to understand the book so well? How did you get so passionate about it? Guys, I read this paragraph. And it so resonated with me that it said, it's so related to it. I thought, man, if this paragraph is talking to me, I bet there's more stuff in this book that's talking to me. And now I love every page. So the bottom paragraph is so important because it sums up what we talked about today. If I believe I'm physically, mentally, and spiritually ill, and I get a little snapshot of what the solution is going to look like, how to have a psychic change and be healthy, from this point, now that I've been educated, this is only going to go 2 ways. This is what this bottom paragraph says. If you're as seriously alcoholic as we were, seriously addicted as we were, what does it mean to be seriously alcoholic, seriously addicted, a real addict, physically powerless, mentally powerless, spiritually ill? If you're like us, we believe there's no middle of the road solution. 90 meetings in 90 days ain't going to do it. Put a plug in the jug. Just don't call your dealer. That ain't going to do it. Right? We were in a position where life was becoming impossible. And if we'd passed into the region from which there's no return through human aid, we have but two alternatives. Dave, you want to chime in before I finish this?
Absolutely. So what we're talking about there, this is the experience of the first 100, the first 180, first 84, however many it was. Doesn't really matter what it was. That's their experience. Take this statement, turns into a question, and put it in first person here. David, are you in a position where life's becoming impossible? Again, please consider what we're asking here, what the book is asking us. And if you pass into a region from which there is no return through human aid, my wife, my kids, my mom, my dad, all the things, my job, all these things, my neighbors, the police department, the courts, and everything else have tried to get me sober, but I passed beyond human aid. Am I done, good and for all? Do I want permanent sobriety? And yes, you can get well quickly here. Go ahead, David.
So if you're like us, if you agree with how we explain the first step today, we have but two alternatives. One is to go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we could. That's this, guys. And if you're only listening and putting the blinders on like a horse, I'm just being led through life, going on to the bitter end. And hopefully I have a bitter end that ends in death, because living that addicted alcoholic life was miserable day by day. So that's alternative number one, going on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we could. And the other is to accept spiritual help. Every time we read this, again, I said I'm coming up on 20 years clean and sober. David's come up on 24. It's ridiculous. It's like, of course I will take the spiritual help. But guess who this wasn't a ridiculous proposition to when he first came in? It wasn't for this David, and it wasn't for that David, right? Because coming to meetings, hanging out with all you weird people, getting a sponsor, reading a book, God, what? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. You know what I did know? Going on to the bitter end is the life I was leading. I was very comfortable with the devil I knew. The pain was very predictable. That's why we have to face these two alternatives. And that's why as sponsors and step guides, we have to take people through the book so they have this experience and decide on their own. Do I want to keep living in the pain, dance with the devil, or do I want to get right?
Go ahead. Oh, okay. I guess we're going to finish up here. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was going to look up a definition, but it's okay. I won't do this. So what am I accustomed to? Just like David said, going on the bitter end, blocking out the consciousness of my intolerable situation the best I can. I beg of you today. And here's how I know I'm powerless. I just ran out of plans. My bottom was this. This is my life, and it's never going to get any better than this. For me, it was a moment of clarity. That God froze the liar in me just for that moment to do something against my nature. And I was locked up in a psych ward. And I walked down to the payphone and I called someone in Alcoholics Anonymous and asked them for help. And the help I was asking for, I didn't know it was supposed to be spiritual. But boy, I followed his rules to a T out of this book, and it became spiritual help. These are the disciplines that I live in my life every single day. My obsession has been removed since I've been 3 months sober. I've not had a thought of picking. I've had a thought, but I've not had an obsession. Two different things. You want to learn more about that? Go to Big Book Studies. Learn about the difference between what an obsession is a thought, but an obsession occurs when without my permission, without my consent. And I need to know about that kind of stuff. So I guess we're at the end of our time here, right, bro?
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate
Thank you guys.
Share here today.
Thank you very much.